My name is Alessandro Svensson. I'm the head of Neo4j Innovation Lab, and I'm going to host this session with Sara over here. Johannesson. We're both Swedish, so it's a little bit weird to pronounce our last names in English. So I'm going to kick this off with we're gonna cover two things in this talk. So first is I'm going to introduce the Neo4j Innovation Lab, which is something we've been working on for just about over a year. And Previa is actually our first real case study from this work that we've been doing within the Innovation Lab throughout 2018. And this actually started in 2017. So we're going to cover, Sara's going to talk about how Previa really reimagined their business, which is preventive care with connected data. And I'm going to talk a little bit about our methodology and the way we approach, like our way of work within the Innovation Lab. There we go. So the Innovation Lab was introduced in 2017. And we did our first pilot project in June of that year. So we've been up and running for roughly, 1.5 years now. It feels almost like 5 years, but it's been, it went by quick. And we've done a lot of projects, especially during 2018. We average several projects per month, actually, now, which is really, really fun. But the first pilot project was in June in 2017. And that was actually the project that we did together with Sara's team at Doberman and Previa. So in a nutshell, what we do is that we help companies accelerate innovation and transformation through graph thinking. That's our whole purpose, really. This clicker is a little bit slow. And how we do this is that we generate and prototype graph projects together with our customers and prospects. So it's really a collaborative effort, these labs. The expected outcome of this is not to build perfect projects, as you will see when I go through the methodology. It's more to provide really like a deep understanding of what it means to think in graphs and the possibilities in innovation and transformation that is enabled by adopting Neo4j and really start thinking about your data as connected. The methodology that we use is a 3.5-day workshop, which we call the Innovation Lab Sprint. And I'm going to go through what that means and how that works, and everything you need to know at this point to engage further with us. But first, I want to kick off by talking about how companies adopt Neo4j and where this fits in this adoption cycle. So you can think about, there's basically 3 ways that this happens, that a company gets introduced to Neo4j. Being an open source software from the beginning, and we have our community edition and so on. Typically, or I think in most cases, definitely up to now anyways, developers or architects are working on problem that they know that graphs would be a good solutions for. And that doesn't really require an engagement with us in terms of like understanding the potential with the technology and so on. Because the problems are more specific. It can be that your relational database don't perform in a certain way, for example. And then you start looking at graph, you download the community versions, you try out, you do your own POCs or a POC with us and so on. So that's kind of like how we operated for almost a decade, where the customer kind of came to us with their problems. The other way, and this is something that Emil covered a lot this morning, that there are use cases now based on the maturity of this category that is just like a proven fit. Like if you're working as a risk manager or in fraud detection or in recommendations and so on, you might have heard that graphs are a good technology to deal with those kind of challenges. And there's a lot of resources about it. There's tons of benchmarks. There's a lot of white papers written and so on. So there's pretty easy to kind of get familiar how graphs fit a specific use case. What we've seen, especially like the past 18 months, where this technology really have continued to evolve and get an increasing footprint within an organization, is that connected data, just as a strategic fit for transformation, it's also very prevalent. But the people who are looking at these, like the innovation teams or leadership teams and so on, they might not have a problem in mind in the first place, and it might not even fit kind of like the mold of a specific known use case. And that's the realm where the Innovation Lab works. So we don't work so much with known problems or very well-defined use cases. We actually look at the use case that we would call digital transformation. And the good thing with known use cases is that even though they can be very complicated, I mean, you can apply graph-based machine learning on fraud detection, and it can be like a complicated thing. The thing is, the input and the output is still known. You know what you want to achieve within a realm of a use case. The digital transformation is different because it might be kind of like just the future roadmap of a company, really, or product that you don't really know about yet within an organization. And that's not as easy. It requires more of an inquiry and an exploration around what's possible, really. Because if we look at digital transformation as a use case, it's not a specific sets of items to check. It's really these really large challenges. It could be, a company culture challenge. You can have a talent challenge that you're not able to recruit the right people, for example. It could be a business analytics challenge, an engineering challenge, a design challenge, an experience challenge, and so on. And these are sets of really complicated problems. And what we explore in the Innovation Lab is the kind of the connected data narrative of all of these problems. And that's what our process is based on. And in order to achieve this, the first thing we look at is really this paradigm and shift in mindset. Because we're so stuck in, or many companies that we work with, are so stuck in this paradigm of having their processes, their data, their structures, their thinking based on these kind of siloed, very specific, solving specific tasks within each silo and so on, that it becomes formative. If you've been working in an environment that has this kind of structure underneath, it's hard to think outside the box and really have these kind of like cross-pollination, which is so important when we talk about this innovation and transformation use cases. So the first thing we do is really to start and look and see like what's possible just in the mindset, like what opens up if you can start relating to your data and to your processes in the way that stuff is actually connected, which also happens to be data modeled as a graph, right? Another way to look at this is that your processes will always be mirrored in some sort of data structure. And this is a very common problem. And we actually use this concept almost as a mantra. So whatever processes you have sort of on stage or that you deal with day to day, they will always be represented here. So conceptually, like if you think about a process that will look kind of like at a hierarchy, it could be like a CRM tool or something like that, or a supply chain that is very linear, or information that is stored in a certain way. There's always a representation in data, and this happens whether you think about it or not, right? What we do within the lab is to reimagine if we can change the underlying data structures here, or the structures, what opens up in terms of business processes. So thinking about an hierarchy, for example, that can actually be represented more as an organization, which obviously changed a lot how you would approach a CRM problem, for example. A supply chain that is connected can obviously start taking shape as a more dynamic supply chain, which opens up for those types of application. And there's a lot of talk about AI here today, and knowledge graphs are one of those ways of thinking about information and storing information in a certain way. So you see that your business processes and your data structure will always be kind of like in a dance, and you can't have like one without the other, really. Because if you want to strategically change your processes, but you don't change kind of like your underlying foundations, you will always operate at a deficit, right? So I want to talk a little bit about our methodology, how we actually approach these exercises with customers to fast forward a way of thinking about your processes in a way that is connected as opposed to siloed and stale, right? So there are three components to an innovation lab. First of all is the business processes, the technology, the data science, which is obviously graphs in our case, and also that we wrap this around a methodology that is very heavy influenced by design thinking. So the processes is obviously input that comes from a customer. So if we work with a bank, for example, the team from that bank will be the experts in that business domain. We provide the technology and the data science part and the expertise in graph. And the innovation lab, which is where I work, we think a lot about like the methodology, how to kind of like wrap this around exercises that will accelerate this kind of thinking. So when we have this as a combination, like in the middle there is really where we see that we have our sweet spot, where we are the most effective. And what this looks like as a process is something like this. So first of all, everything that we do at Neo, and this is something that we can't escape, revolves around the graph platform, like our technology. The difference between a lab and I would say more technical exercise is that we focus as much time on the mindset itself, like really thinking about graphs. And then the third component here is that we also want you to experience the different with something tangible. So the mindset is all about like to reveal your own potential with connected data, to like make that jump, like experience that paradigm shift in how you think. Then you see it materialize in Neo4j through those exercises, which becomes more technical, where we model, we ingest data, and so on. And at the end, we experience the difference with something tangible, which means that we build a prototype that you can kind of touch and feel and interact with based on having made this shift. And we've seen that when this happens in a sequence, it becomes almost cathartic, because you really have that in a very short amount of time. You go from sometimes not even I've heard the terminology graph to really experience what's possible within your company or in your team, having gone through this process. And the way we solve this is by something we call the innovation sprint, which is a 3.5-day exercise, which we do with customers. This has the format of a pretty standard design sprint. What makes this Neo4j unique is that we're not agnostic when it comes to technology. We only focus on graphs, and that's what we explore. So here's a little bit of here's some pictures to just like get a vibe for what this looks like in real life. So it's a very intense session where we work full days for 3.5 days. The first part is all about generating use cases, which at Neo, based on the model being so intuitive, is a very analog exercise. So this is more the vibe kind of like of the week than people actually sitting and crunching on computers. The next part is the data modeling. And this is also one of the benefits with Neo, is that we can actually represent pretty significant problems just on a whiteboard and really discover what's significant, what would be a significant graph problem to solve for a specific company, and then dig into what this will look like as a graph. And as these days progress, we go into more detail. We start actually identifying data sources, ingesting sample data, and so on, and even get to the point where we craft algorithms and pretty advanced queries. And at the end of it, we focus a lot on actually not have this end as a conceptual exercise, and we really do prototyping, and not prototyping that feels like obscure or rushed. We actually put a lot of energy into making them like beautiful and represent something that you would actually imagine using, right? Yeah, so that was a little bit about the methodology. And Sara here, who has been very gracious to present their result as a participant in one of these sprints, are going to talk about a healthcare use case from Previa.
Yes, thank you, Alessandro. Nice to be here. I flew all the way from Stockholm. Do you know where that is? Good. Just checking. See if you're awake. Yes, I'm going to talk about a sprint that we did with Previa in San Francisco together with Alessandro. And this is about preventing burnouts, which is a good thing, we think. So Previa, just going to give you a bit of background because we don't really have this in the US. It's an occupational healthcare company. That means that it's legislated in Sweden that you have to offer healthcare to your employees as an employer. That can be everything from preventive care to therapy to health exams, making sure that the work environment is good for you. And Previa is one of the largest ones in Sweden. And they are also offering a service that is whenever you are sick, you're calling Previa. And they are you can tell Previa why you are ill and not coming to work, and then Previa will send a message to your boss and letting them know that you are ill. And this is what the service looked like a year ago. It's very messy, it's hard to find, and all their clients, so Previa is a business-to-business company. So all the clients were like, so you're meeting all my employers all day. So what can you find out about them? Why are they ill? What do I need to do? How can I make sure that they are a healthy workforce? And they were like, well, we can't really tell you because this data is not really structured in a good way. So yeah, this was a problem for Previa. When I first met them, I was like, oh my God, you have so much data and you're not doing anything with it. And they were like, no, we tried a few times, but yeah, we don't really know what to do. And the more we dig into it, it's like they had so much data. It was so frustrating. So we were also happy to be here now. Luckily, we managed to convince them that we should fly to San Francisco and do the sprint with Neo. So I took a few of my team members with me, 5 people in a room for a week. Very happy, as you can see. It's fun to be, not only in San Francisco, but doing the lab. And the sprint was, of course, needed for Previa to make sure that their business cases was going to be stronger and to be able to answer their clients' needs and questions. They want to make sure to provide the best healthcare they can and make sure that they give the right recommendations, not only to their clients, but also to their own doctors and physiotherapists and psychologists. And this is where Previa was. They have many, many users, but they were not very intelligent data. So they just needed to make a frog leap? What do you say in English? To make sure that they were better than all like the startups that are coming. Because why do you want to go to like this old company when you have a cool startup that understands data from start? So we're going to look at what kind of data we had to work with. Remember, Sweden is a fairly small country. We are 10 million people living there, and approximately half of them, like 5 million people, are working. So Previa has 7,500 companies as clients. That means 1.1 million Swedish employees. They have the sick leave notifications. It's about 400,000 a year. And they're doing 40,000 healthcare exams. So for this sprint, we had a focus on the sick leave data. It's data from 180,000 employees since 2005. It's real-time data. It's a focus on short-time absences and long-term absences. is also focused on if my leave is perceived as has something to do with my work. So connecting the data. After going through and understanding what Previa is and what kind of data Previa's got, this was our whiteboard model that we did in San Francisco. It looks like this. If you, yeah, it's a bit clearer here. And this is actually not as far from the model that we use today. So I'm going to walk you through this a bit about what we're actually doing. So we're focusing on people's, individuals' healthcare, right? So we have a person. That person has an employment at a company. And the absence is tied to an employment. So with all the absence, you have a reason to why you're ill, right? So that's why you have a condition. And we're tying the condition to both the absence and the person. That's to make sure that we can follow the person no matter where the person works. And we can also see if the condition is tied to the employment. Previa is offering a service for hopefully to cure the condition. So if a person is using that service, we also tie that to the employment to see if there is some patterns that we can see that is related to the employment. So with this model, we can find patterns that previously been hidden. We're also able to see patterns that previously we've known are there, but are super hard for us to find. But with Neo now, we can do that. I'm going to give you another example. So we have a superstar ski person who is employed as a skier at the cross-country team. The superstar skier gets an ear infection, a cold, and a stomach flu. And we have a superstar politician, which is the prime minister and hired at the government. The superstar politician has also had an ear infection, a cold, and a stomach flu. But what happened to the superstar politician? He got burned out. So now we know that, of course, he got burned out, and of course, he got rehabilitation from Previa. But now we want to prevent our superstar skier to get burned out as well. So we know that the rehab is working with all these three conditions. So that's why we can give the superstar ski person a preventive care, and we know what we should offer. We can also find other patterns that doesn't really have to do with the individual. So here we have a company with two departments, and we can see on the right-hand side that we have 3 employees with a lot of absences. And on the left-hand side, we have, well, my left, we have employees that doesn't have as many absences as the other ones. So here we can look for other things. Maybe it's something in the environment. What about the air? What about ergonomics or something? Or maybe it's on a structural level, or maybe it's actually that you have a bad boss. So these are also super interesting to look at those patterns that we can't really find, that we couldn't find before. So we are building a new tool for Previa for a healthier work life. And this is the prototype that we did in San Francisco. We just wanted to make sure that everyone as an employer or working as a boss, that you have a good overview about how your workforce are doing and if there is something that you need to act on. So this was just a super simple model of how to use the data. So this is what we have today, and everything is in Swedish. I'm sorry about that. It's also fake numbers, so nothing of this is real, just to make sure that you know that. So here is like, what do I need to know as a boss? Yes, I need to know if there is something that I need to act on. If there is someone ill, that maybe I need to call in someone else to work, because I need my staff to be there. And it might be if there's something wrong with a person, if someone has been ill for 3 times during the last 6 months, that increases the risk of being long-term sick listed with 50%. So if that has happened, maybe I need to check on that person. Maybe it's something wrong, maybe I can help them in some way. And that's something that we really want to do, make sure that people get the help they need. But since I'm also a working boss, I don't have much time. So I'm just going to make sure that I have all the information I need at the first view. So here you can see absence today, how many is coming back to work. Here you can see the history. You can see if someone is using a service right now. This is an overview over the past 6 months over all your department. You can see how we're doing and if there's something maybe you need to deal with on a department level. Yeah. So if we're looking a bit at the architecture, I think this is interesting because Previa is an old company, whereas like all the data they have is structured in silos in an old way. They're moving the data to the data warehouse that we have. And we could build with Neo on top of that, which is very good. So that means the Previa can change all their old systems, but they don't have to do that first and then move forward. They're moving forward in the same time as they are changing the old systems. Keeping pace, super important. Yeah, these are just some examples of the data sources that we use from the start for the prototype. So this is where we've taken Previa. It's from the very old structure into the prototype and then into a new tool that's actually helping the Swedish workforce getting healthier. And we're really looking forward to finding more patterns that's been hitting before. Some of the learnings that we had from doing this sprint was how the power of this prototype that we came home with was given to the organization and how it motivated the organization to do some actual change. Because it's when you're in an old organization and you know that you need to change, but you don't really know how to do it, then this is a super good tool for that. It was also unlocking a lot of their own business potential. They knew that they had something that was good, but they couldn't really see it. When they saw the prototype, they were like, listing, we can do this, we can do that. It never stopped, which was awesome. It's also a good way to take them from vision to action. It's very good. It's very easy to say that you want to do something and be visionary, but you don't really know how. So this is hands-on. And one other learning is the power of having different skill sets in the room. When we were in San Francisco, we had data scientists, engineers, designers, UX. And I was representing the company Previa because I've been working with them for a long while. And the power of that, it's awesome, I would say. Alessandro, do you want to join me on stage?
Yes. Is this working?
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you so much. It's always very beautiful to see when we go from the prototyping stage, because as far as the lab is concerned, we stop our engagement after those 3.5 days. And this is a year after, and you're actually in production with a tool that really is changing this company from being a very old legacy company that was under pretty huge pressure from all of the funding that went into healthcare, all the startups that kept popping up. And I think in Sweden it was after fintech. I think healthcare is like the area where we see the most startups. So it's very, very heartwarming to see that you actually took it all the way from prototyping with us into production. Yes. Very, very cool. Yeah, so on a final note, I just want to share how how this works, like how you could participate in a sprint or how your company can engage with us in this. And it's pretty straightforward. So in an innovation lab, what we provide is basically 3 skills. So it's the lab leader, which is essentially more of a facilitator role. We always have a Neo4j field engineer present, which is skillful in both kind of like the architecture concerns of Neo, but often it's also a data science. So that's the kind of the Neo4j engineer that we bring, the kind of data science part of Neo, and also UX designer, which is super important when it comes to prototyping, wireframing, and that tangibility of what we produce. The organization for the Innovation Lab is, we have 2 heads of the lab, which is, I'm one of them, and I am based in the US, and we have Stefan here, who is, if you stand up, you're probably, yeah, and you're probably the tallest person at the conference, so you're very easy to spot. Who covers Europe if you have questions and you are based in Europe. The typical audience for one of these sprints is not necessarily like an innovation team, but what we've seen is that a lot of companies, or I would say almost every Fortune 2000 companies that I've run into have this sort of team that sits outside the complexities of the normal day-to-day, and they have mandate to work on these kind of one-off projects and not be stopped by the slowness of their organization. And typically they're called, like the transformation team or innovation team, or it could be a specific group that is just summoned for that occasion. Often there's also a partner agency connected to it. It could be like a McKinsey or something like that would help you with these types of or a design agency like Doberman, for example, that assist companies in these types of transformations. The important thing with this metaphor is that these teams can look they can take many shapes or forms, but I would say what always happens is that they're there to think kind of outside the box, not to live in their old stale kind of processes, which would defeat the purpose, right? These are some of the testimonials that we've had just like the last 6 months. So as you can see, it's a very different spread. The methodology virtually never changed, but we work with everything from heavy industry to banks to media companies to healthcare companies and so on. And I think one of the things that stands out is that the feedback that we got in the process is that they really like that it's fast, they get a deep understanding fast, and when you get, kind of what you were saying, when you get like these different skill sets in the room, the production level and the outcome becomes almost unexpected. So that kind of captures the benefit with this approach, and this is something that we see a lot at Neo4j, having been in this space for so long, that one of the biggest challenges that companies face is not so much the adoption of it, because once you get going, it's actually quite fast, because typically you will solve a problem that you have a harder time solving the way it is, right? But I would say the validation of a technology is really what takes time. We've seen companies, spend 18 months in just like validating if this tech is the right thing for them. And depending on the disruption that goes on in your industry, 18 months is a long time. So say if you're a retailer today, for example, and you're stuck in a legacy structure, you don't really have 18 months to figure out your recommendations, for example. So I think that's the biggest kind of takeaway, that we achieve more, I think, in 3.5 days having this methodology and this structure in place than some of these companies that we work with have done in a year. And that's really a testament to the process, I would say, and what happens when you get all these skill sets together in a room for a week with a very kind of mindful methodology. Cool. To end this session, we found this quote from Charles Eames, who I think, I'm not exactly sure about the date, but I think he actually passed away in 1978. But it's a very interesting quote, I think, that eventually everything connects: people, ideas, objects. The quality of the connection is key to quality per se. And I think it's a very nice way to frame what we try to do and teach and experience within this lab. That's all we had. Thank you.
Now in that 18 months?
I think we're going to end the year with roughly at a pace of 2 per month, I would say. Yes, and the lead time from kind of like first contact to engaging with us it's a matter of weeks in getting like the logistics together. Yeah. Any other question? I think we're actually running late in the session, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.